Some of you may know that I've dabbled a bit in stand-up comedy, which is one reason why The Bitter Buddha is a documentary that's close to my heart. It tells the story of Eddie Pepitone, a stand-up comic with an act full of self-loathing, middle-class rage, and bitterness, who's been doing comedy for over 30 years. But for some reason, whether it's changing tastes, the state of the country, or increased exposure through the internet, Eddie's unique voice and perspective have started to find an audience among comics and comic-savvy younger fans, like first-time director Steven Feinartz, who happened to be following Eddie as things started to break his way. I had the chance to talk with Eddie and Steven about Eddie's unlikely career trajectory, where his comedy comes from and how it's changed over the years, the role of the comedian as truth teller, and a lot more. So check out my interview with Eddie Pepitone and Steven Feinartz and see The Bitter Buddha on iTunes and video on demand. You say in the movie that that comedy gave you a life. I was just wondering kind of what that means to you.
Well, I was just so insecure, and I felt beaten down by life, that comedy was a way for me to shine. Like, it was the one place I found that I could use my complete neurotic, hypochondriacal, all my neuroses, and just get them out. And people would actually pay to see that. You know what I mean? Like, I just found it the perfect art form for me, or the perfect thing to do, because I just didn't relate to any other field.
It kind of comes up in the film, the idea that, you know, you're getting this recognition for your comedy later in your career. And I guess I'm curious, do you think it's probably a combination, but do you think it's because of your evolution as a comic? Is it that comedy audiences have changed, or is it are you just more sure of what you do, or is the world just more ready for your voice?
You know what? I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. Like, my evolution, I've gotten more fearless and courageous. The technology has helped me a lot. Podcasts, internet videos that I've done, like, audiences, I think, can find comics easier, or comics can find their audiences easier through podcasts and videos that aren't filtered through, a network. And then, my evolution too, I've just, honed my stuff as I've gotten older. It's just taken me longer,
Yeah, I think it's also, Eddie used to be just doing small shows in LA and doing alternative rooms like UCB and all that, but now the people can find him on, like, The Long Shot or on the Dana Gould podcast or WTF, all these shows that Eddie does. It's just a way for people to just find Eddie. Kind of, also discover a lot of great comedians as well. Podcasting.
Well, let's just talk about me. You know what I mean? Oh.
I'm wondering what you think are, I guess for Eddie, things that average people don't understand about stand-up comedy, both from sort of not appreciating things that they don't appreciate goes into it, but also the sort of demystifying of it, because, a lot of people say, like, oh, I could never do that. Like, that's a realm that I would never go into. So I think there's kind of two sides of that. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, well, for me, you know what? It's the old adage of, I didn't choose stand-up chose me. Like, I really believe that the people who stick with stand-up, because it's a very brutal thing, because it's just you in front of an audience, and the rejection. When people bomb, you know what I've noticed over the years? People who try to get into stand-up, they disappear when they bomb. Because when you're in front of an audience and no one is laughing, for a real comedian, that is so gut-wrenching. That is like getting, it's like getting stabbed or being annihilated. Like, that was the feeling for me. And I still bomb occasionally. Like, it's an annihilation of your soul, because the driving force of being a comedian is needing to hear laughter, needing attention, needing to do something healing to yourself and others. That probably sounds a little pretentious, but it really is, for me, that's what it's about. And it's an intense thing. And it takes a lot of courage to keep doing it, And money doesn't come easily for a while, because it takes a long time to get good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Steven, so when you...
Boy, I was happy with that answer.
Yeah, that was good.
I really was.
I was wondering, I mean, when you went into this project, what were you hoping to find? What was hard to capture, and what did you think you got?
Question. I was hoping to find a lot of pain. No, I was hoping, I think I was just hoping to just really get to what makes Eddie tick and what drives his comedy, and what makes him want to be a better comedian, a better person. And I think we got into the Eddie meditating, and Eddie just being fearless and going on the road and doing these things that he's pushing himself. And later in life was really interesting to me, because we don't see a lot of people who are in their 50s who then sort of kind of take off. And I think watching Eddie do that has really been interesting. So.
And speaking of kind of where comedy comes from, I took a friend to the Two-Headed Beast storytelling show at Stories in Echo Park. But my friend, she was like, "What they're talking about is so sad. I just don't find it funny." And but I'm thinking like, no, but like the idea of like laughing at sadness and laughing at pain and laughing at anger, like that is funny. But I guess some people don't really see that.
It's different for different people. Some people don't want to be exposed to the underbelly of what it is to be funny, But these storytelling shows are growing in popularity because I think people crave honesty. They certainly don't get honesty from politicians. They don't get it, regular, honesty is kind of a hard thing to come by, I think. And they're like, those storytelling things are so brutally honest. People are like, finally, I'm hearing the truth instead of just bullshit that they are fed by advertisements, advertising, corporate crap that rules our country or the world. Corporate crap that rules the world is so much of it false,
Do you ever see yourself in the tradition of jesters and the idea of like comedian as truth teller, or is it just you're just trying to get
no,
things out?
I really do, which may be a downfall, but I really do see the comic as, for me, like social critic, like Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, those types of guys who really have something to say about, how we are living, as individuals and a society. Even though, one thing I do know is that my first job is to be funny, and so I usually am self-effacing first, and I direct a lot of rage toward myself, and then I like to direct it at the society. And I also realize I can't be too preachy, because it's hard to be a preachy comic. Bill Hicks I love, another guy who really had a lot to say.
Yeah. And those are the guys who, like Bill Hicks was the guy who went after advertising and all that, and he was never one of those guys who then went ahead and did a commercial or anything like that. It's staying true to yourself, and I think Eddie stays true to himself too, and it's something that shows.
Contemporary guys who do it beautifully are Mark Maron, Dana Gould. The way they talk about themselves and then the world they live in is amazing. Patton Oswalt is amazing doing that. Just talking about, for instance, he's talking a lot now about raising his kids and the context. He can make it poignant and also absurd.
I'm kind of curious about sort of the tradition of what, for lack of a better term, would be called angry comics. And I was wondering whether that was something that it was more popular at one point and then kind of went away to some degree because it became more conventional and personal. But then at the same time, you have this great angry persona that is connecting with all these younger people that I thought maybe the more sensitive comic thing had sort of overtaken the angry comic thing.
I think the angry comic thing is coming back a little bit because people are angry, just in general. The economy tanked, Wall Street crashed. A lot of people are out of work, even though the face that's put up is that we're in an economic recovery. I don't really think so. You know what I mean? I think that, so people want that now more, I think.
And I think a lot of young people really do connect with Eddie because, him laughing at the whole crumbling of the society and just talking about, the extreme nature of, what's going on and how the corporations are just, screwing over everybody. And I think everybody knows that, and it's out in the open, but people are blind to it, and young people especially see Eddie as just this voice of reason, even though it's coming from just a yelling, screaming kind of place. But I think that's why people who are like 18 to 30, 40, they love Eddie.
Is there a difference between kind of comedy as expressing your anger, or is that dealing with your anger?
Well, I think they're kind of one and the same. When you deal with it, when I deal with my anger, I can express it. You know what I mean? But someone else asked me a similar question. It's like I need a little distance from it, because if I'm really angry and upset for real, I don't want to take that on stage. I want to take just a little distance from it so I can see what I was angry about and kind of form it to the crowd, instead of just coming up there and being like, because that may not be an entertaining thing, just someone being legitimately angry. You know what I mean? There's a fine line between, real anger and anger that is used to entertain. I remember one time I broke up with a girl, and I was performing that night, and I broke up during the day, and I was like, oh, this will be a good outlet for me, for the anger. Turned out not so much. Not at all, because I was so angry and upset, and I got into it with somebody in the audience, and it was awful. Like I had no distance on my pain that day. So I don't think you could go up there raw like that.
A lot of times you can't see through lines and patterns until you look backwards. Are you seeing a through line now, having the grand view of it, or did the film allow you to see kind of a through line for things? Or?
The film definitely gave me insights into myself. Like I realized how I was playing it safe for a lot of years by only performing in New York alternative rooms or Los Angeles alternative rooms. The film made me realize I really should get more out there, So it made me realize that I think I'm this, crazy, courageous comic when I really was scared as well,